He's a good player, so it wouldn't surprise me if they did chuck him in that way, or if whether they've just gone and restructured their entire team around different roles for all of the players. We know that Vanilla's probably going to stick to support. The other players, who knows? We'll see how they go.
Yeah.
What I was going to mention was, yes, Pleb to Pro, they because they lost Hacky previous to qualifying, and as you mentioned, they picked up Downfall. They are the first Open Division team to qualify into this Premier Division phase. Seconded only by the new team to be announced, who beat RU, previously RU, this is the Pleb to Pro Academy team, Disco, which is, I think that's pretty great. Have you've seen the academies that are coming out?
Yeah, all the little, a lot of the orgs are, sort of building academy teams in the Open Division, and they're good teams, but they just don't have, some of them just don't have the experience that we see in a lot of the veteran players, particularly on WGW, who took that second seed into the Premier League.
That they did. I'm intrigued as to how Aztec are going as well, because they have lost Sailor, like I mentioned previously, where he went to one of the other teams, but they picked up Altivian from Crimson.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. And just like jumping back with the dropping of Altivian from Crimson, like this wasn't just removing a player from the Crimson's lineup. They removed their team captain.
Yep.
So like a lot of things that people don't realize about the team captains, just how important they are in building the morale, keeping the team together, getting through those humps. You really should be looking towards your captain for that kind of leadership. And the fact that they've dropped Altivian is massive. But that's a huge pickup for Aztec, who last season were looking really, they were looking a little bit shaky, a little bit dicey in their plays. And, this might be a good start for him with Altivian to really help them regroup in that sense. Not saying that he's going to take over any captaincy or anything like that, but just the fact he's been in a high-stakes team who's gone international, it just brings so much experience to the board.
That's definitely a good point to make, Disco. With the Aztec roster, they were doing really, as you mentioned, they were doing really shaky at the start of the season, but they actually beat Crimson in one of those series in Phase 1. They got really close to breaking into that top-tier ranks, and I'd love to see where they end up in this season. I believe they have kept Doubt as their captain, so I don't think Altivian's threatening that position at least. But with that, they're doing really well, and they're just going to have to keep progressing and keep learning. They've got a great org around them, Aztec. They're very involved and very structured in how they train and how they coach, and they're really supportive of their team, which is, I think, really great. And I'm loving that we've got so many decent organizations in the ANZ hot scene.
Not to mention that Aztec on last week actually took a map off Crimson, I believe. And, I mean, that's a pretty big instance there against the second place team, the team that's predicted to possibly come first this season. Aztec has already taken one map off, and they didn't win the set. But, like they say, if it bleeds, we can kill it, Blank.
Yes, if it bleeds, we can kill it. And I mean, we saw that last season where Mindfreak actually lost a game to Crimson in one of the last rounds of the season. And then we saw them at the Intercontinental Clash go to 7 games, Disco, the 7th game before the winner was decided between those two teams. So, yes, even the best teams among us can be beaten, which with all the roster changes around this season, I'm really intrigued to see how some of these players, or how these teams play with the new players. Yeah, sorry, we were going to go into caster predictions, but we haven't got all our caster predictions in yet. So we're going to move that over to the Thursday night episode, which will be, we'll have a graphic up for you and we can actually go through our caster predictions properly. But Disco, between you and me, what are your thoughts on this current list of teams and where they're going to place this season?
Oh, it's a pretty tough one, right? With so many roster swaps, you just don't know how that's going to affect the teams or affect their gameplay. The teams that will do well are those who can adapt to their new lineup faster than the other ones. As far as who's going to come out on first, I feel still it's a race. It's still a race between Crimson and Mindfreak Pro and how fast they can adapt to their new players, Hacky, and so in the terms of Mad Hacks. outside in the third place position, Twisted Vision, they've got a really good chance for it. But also Pleb to Pro and a Xylophone Dudes, they look like pretty good front runners as well. The Aztecs performed really well. So, going from 5th to 4th place, in a 5th to 4th place condition. And then outside of that, WGW, the new team from Open Div. Who else we got? I'm just trying to remember the team names off the top of my head.
Reality.
Reality, the ex-Rich Gang, and then even
Pleb to Pro, the new one,
Pro as well. Yeah, it's where they fit on this ladder as well. So there's kind of like batches of teams at the moment. And how well or where they actually place this season is a bit up in the air, but that's kind of what I'm feeling. I think the old comers, Crimson, Crimson Gaming, Mindfreak Pro, and Twisted Vision are going to have a good chance again of being top 3. And then everyone else, but it's anyone's season, really.
It really is. You're right. It really is anyone's season, and I think that this season is probably going to be one of the closer seasons that we've had for a while. I do think Mindfreak are still really strong, but I think losing Penta, one of arguably the best tanks in ANZ, now that Robodover's gone, RIP, is still one of the strongest teams. And Crimson are still one of the strongest teams. And now they've picked up Hacky at the cost of Altivian. I think that they're going to be stronger again. No toxic to Altivian, but Hacky is just another level player. I mean, he went to BlizzCon last year.
Yeah.
And you've got teams like Twisted Vision, Xylophone Dudes, who, again, are a combination of like Outlaws players, Downfall players, and all that. I think that they'll do okay. I think Aztec are going to be a contender for that 3rd spot, to be honest. Out of all these teams, I think we're going to have a separation. So Crimson, Mindfreak, and Aztec will be up that top 3, with Twisted Vision, Xylophone, and potentially Reality in that next 3 group. With the 2 new Open Division teams just not being able to compete in comparison to the rest of the teams. I think that they're just not going to have that synergy as we've seen from the other teams.
Yeah, we're still about 2 or 3 weeks from now, about halfway through the season, we'll start to get an idea on the form of the teams. Those that kept up their training regimens for the off season and how well they've adapted to the new players on the roster. But it's going to take a couple of weeks before we can really tell how each team's are gelling. Mindfreak is going to be incredibly competitive. Crimson will be incredibly competitive. But we saw Crimson, and we saw a couple of mistakes from Hacky on map 2 against Aztec, which ultimately led to Aztec winning that game. That's kind of an important thing to bring up, is how well the teams gel and how well these players in their new lineups gel as well. So that's, will Hacky get comfortable? Or is he going to be a little bit of this phase? He's going to take this phase to get comfortable, and then won't be into next year that we actually see him really shine on the Crimson roster.
Well, that's an interesting point, because, Hacky has been out of the game and out of the scene for nearly a whole season now. Since he went into the Open Division and played 4 weeks with MMC, which obviously is now Pleb to Pro. He left them, and pretty much since mid-season break, he hasn't played HOTS again until recently. So he's probably still finding his feet, and now gelling with the new team. Everything's a little bit different. I think that he'll do well under Crimson. I think it'll take him a couple of weeks just to get the hang of the game again, especially with a couple of the changes and patches that we've had over the last couple of weeks. But I think that they'll do well. Do we want to quickly have a chat about last week's game? So you mentioned already that Crimson did take a game off Aztec. So let's jump back to the Tuesday night's game. So last Tuesday night, we had 2 very strong 2-0 games. So first up, we had Crimson taking down Reality 2-0. Did you get to see much of that game, Disco?
I watched all of the first game. And there wasn't a second game, unfortunately, because Reality had to forfeit due to a roster issue. So we kind of already seen there that Crimson took a convincing game in this game 1, and there just was no game to play on. That was no surprise that set came out that way. And you know what? Just to be a little bit memey here, but Reality, that's ex-Rich Gang, so
I was
not playing games. Not necessarily anything changed from last season, right? But then the second game of that night was actually Twisted Vision up against Xylophone Dudes.
Yes.
And it looked really good for Xylophone Dudes, but they really just couldn't bring it together in the later stages of each game. And so Twisted Vision just ended up rolling them in that regards, 2-0 again. But night 2 blank, Thursday is where I feel we really started to see some unexpected results.
Yes. So the first game of the night was Xylophone Dudes, who lost in that first week's game and ended up against
Pleb to Pro.
Pleb to Pro, yes. So Pleb to Pro, and this is the new Open Division team, and they ended up beating Pleb to Pro 2-1. Tell me a bit about those games.
So it's I actually got the fortune of actually casting both the next series we're going to talk about, this one XD and Pleb to Pro and Crimson against Aztec, and they were incredible games to watch. They all kind of started a little bit slow, and it was always seemed to be in Pleb to Pro's favor. In game 1, pretty much 100% in Pleb to Pro favor, but in game 2 and 3, we saw Xylophone Dudes just start to be fresh in the decision making. And we even saw a Cho'Gall come out in game 2. And not that Cho'Gall is not viable, but he's a sort of character that people kind of laugh a little bit about, you know, when a Cho'Gall appears. But they won that game. And then in the last set, they managed to really, panic or force Pleb to Pro to try and win. Like they forced them to make a bad play that won the game for them.
Yeah, and it was a really close set. I really think that Pleb to Pro could have won that. Do you honestly think that Pleb to Pro do have a chance in this season?
Before that game, I thought they were going to be an extremely competitive team, and this has kind of, that series did show that they're still competitive, but it was surprising to see Xylophone Dudes take a win against them, considering all the hype of Pleb to Pro coming in the Premier, the Premier League. So that was an interesting game in that sense. And let's face it, XD are two teams merged together, so they've adapted quickly to each other's play style.
And I believe they are doing really well. I'm interested to see how they play out later on in the season. But let's jump quickly to the second game of the night because we're running out of time. Crimson beating Aztec 2-1. As you mentioned previously, Aztec taking that second map off Crimson. That's, in my opinion, a really big step forward for Aztec because as much as it might have been a Crimson mistake, it was Aztec that forced them to make that mistake.
Yeah, and this is where I was highlighting with Hacky that he's got to really find his footing in every game in this season. And Crimson still won, so, that was expected. But, just one little mistake or one little flaw, or let's call it the weak link in their chain, and teams can capitalize on it. And that's what Aztec did during game 2. That's what Crimson has to look out for. If teams keep capitalizing on mistakes like that, and if those mistakes are kind of always directed as the new player Hacky, it might just take him time to find his feet. Having said that, he had game 1 was great and game 3 was great. So let's put it in perspective. He's still playing good. It's when he makes those mistakes that they've got to watch out for.
Well, we are going to see a couple of these teams that we just talked about tonight, Disco. So let's talk about game number 1. Mindfreak, the big dogs, back from Sweden with their new player Mad Hacks taking on Xylophone Dudes. And as you said, Xylophone Dudes are a mishmash of teams put together. They're looking pretty strong. They're looking like they can contest those top, but
look, they were looking strong, but Mindfreaks got Mad Hacks from their lineup. So Xylophone Dudes, any synergy they've had, it's already been interrupted again. And now, anything they've talked about, Mindfreak now know about it, right?
Oh, no, yes.
All the information's there. So that's going to be a hard game for Xylophone Dudes. I don't think they're going to take it. But again, it comes back to can Mad Hacks gel in the Mindfreak lineup? Because, maybe the Xylophone Dudes can punish how well they know Mad Hacks themselves. Because he's an ex-teammate.
Yeah, or Fat 94 can just carry.
Maybe, maybe it's how wide are the man's shoulders? We're going to find out.
How strong is his back? Next game, though. This is going to be an interesting one. Crimson are taking on Twisted Vision, Disco.
Yes.
Two very strong teams. Crimson being the second seed from last season. They took Mind Freak to game number 7, as we mentioned previously, and they're up against Twisted Vision. They're undefeated at the moment, Crimson, but will that continue? Twisted Vision being a newer team, or a newer combination of two teams as well. I think there are some really strong players on their team, but it comes back to what we were talking about before, Disco, where there's that synergy and a lack of preparation going forward into the start of the season, and how they can then build that throughout the season.
Yeah, there's more new players on Twisted Vision's roster than there is on Crimson. Yeah. And I think that's a big thing to note. Twisted Vision has shown us a pretty good opener. Last week with Xylophone Dudes, they 2-0 them. So that sort of does push them above theoretically the mid teams, or like the mid-tier teams from last season.
Yeah.
But, I mean, going up against Crimson, who are still pretty solid. Aztec took one map, but Aztec didn't beat them. Twisted Vision, maybe they can use that to their advantage. Maybe they can punish extra mistakes. But you know what? They're still like a new roster. 3 players new on a 5-man team. That's
their whole roster. that's majority of the team.
Yeah.
It's going to take some work getting to synergize like that, and I think that they can do it. Any team can do it. Any team can beat any team on any given day. We've talked about this many times in the past. It's if Crimson bring their A game, I think that they're going to clearly take this set. I think Mind Freak are just too strong, especially coming back from Sweden, scrimming against some of those international teams. I think they're going to take it as well. Any arguments from yourself?
No, none at all, Blank. I totally agree.
Well, that's pretty much all we have time for tonight. We are going to be heading straight into the Blizzard ANZ channel for tonight's HEC games. With, 2-minute delay, of course. Thank you, firstly, Disco, for joining me on the show tonight. Really appreciate you coming on, and it was great having you last season. Great having you again this season, and I look forward to seeing you again throughout the season on these episodes. And I look forward to watching you cast. Oh, I love seeing you casting, Disco.
Thanks very much, mate. It's great always being on the show. It's great being involved in the HEC productions. It's just a great year that we're having for Heroes of the Storm. So let's see if we can continue it on strong into season 2.
Yes. Massive thanks to Gamester producing the HGC, www.gamester.com. Catch our content on YouTube and Twitch, and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. We do have a quick 5-minute break while we get into tonight's games. They will kick off at 7:30 p.m. sharp. That's on Twitch TV/Blizzard ANZ, which, as you all probably know now, are proudly sponsored by McDonald's Australia. That's all from us tonight, Disco. Thank you guys again for watching. Couldn't do this without you, and really appreciate all that you do for the scene as well. And we'll see you in the Nexus.